You probably know that you can focus bracket with your Olympus camera, but did you know that there are 5 other bracketing features too? I will tell you what those are, how to use them, and why those might be useful for you. Hi there, I'm Peter Forsgard, an Olympus visionary and a professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. Let's get right into the business. You can find bracketing from the shooting menu too. And I will put a link to every different feature that I talk about here. So if you want to look at particular bracketing feature, then just go into the description of this video and click the timestamp for that particular bracketing feature. Okay, but let's start with the first option. The first option is exposure bracketing. And exposure bracketing is very handy if you have a very tricky lighting conditions. You can take several shots and bracket your exposure and then in post choose which one you want to work on and publish. HDR is based on exposure bracketing. I have a separate video about HDR and you can watch it from there. From the menu you can choose how many images you want to bracket. You have choices 2, 3, 5 or 7. The exposure difference depends on the EV step that you have set up in custom menu E1. And here are the choices for that. The order the camera takes the images, that the first one is the exposure you have set to camera. And then the second one is under and the third one is over. And if you have chosen only 2 images for bracketing, then you can choose if the second image is either overexposed or underexposed. And as I said, this is very good if you have a very tricky lighting conditions and want to be sure that you get the exposure correct. You have the amount of images you've chosen in the menu and then you can choose which one is the best. Or if you want to, you can also blend these images together and make a HDR image. It's very easy to do it in Lightroom, for example, or Photoshop. And I'm sure that there are some other softwares that can do it as easily as Lightroom and Photoshop. The second one is white balance bracketing. This is something that I never really have used, but what it actually is that you bracket the red balance versus blue balance, and then you have green versus magenta. And varying those colors, you can get some corrections in your white balance. And if you choose from bracketing, then you can choose which colors you will bracket. And for example, in fluorescent lighting, green magenta bracketing could be good because those lights up green and adding some magenta will make most likely the colors better. And of course you could use auto white balance, but there are situations that you have multiple different kinds of light sources in the scene. For example, in real estate photography, if you make indoors photos indoors, there are lots and lots of different lights, like fluorescent lights, you got tungsten lights, you might have some daylight coming through the window. So bracketing the white balance could be a good thing. And then in post, you could use these images and blend them together to get a perfectly white balanced image. But this is actually something that I haven't really played around with, but I will try this because it's really interesting. The options you have here is 2, 4 or 6 different options on both colors, and you can bracket both at the same time. It will make lots of images with different combinations. But as I said, I haven't really used this bracketing feature. Have you? And if you have, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you have not, do you think anything that could be useful for you? Tell that also in the comments down below. The third bracketing option is bracketing flash. And this is very useful if you're not very used to using flash with your camera or lighting your scene with a flash, because sometimes the exposure might be a bit tricky. Of course, there's the TTL, but still, if you want to use manual flash, bracketing can be an option when you're starting with the flash, because it will take 3 different images with different power of the flash, so the exposure will be a bit different. But this is also something that you need to experiment with and try to master. The differences between the exposures are set in the EV steps in custom menu E1. And the options are the same as they were in the exposure bracketing feature. The fourth one is ISO bracketing. And this is interesting because this varies a bit from the other ones. This one only takes 1 image and then it will store or record the image with different ISOs. And this is a very good way if you have to bracket a moving subject, then use this one, because as I said, it takes only one image and then it will record it with 3 different images with 3 different ISOs, which means 3 different exposures too. So it's kind of like an exposure bracketing too. But of course there will be a bit different amount of noise in each images, but if that's not an issue, then this is a very good way for moving subject and exposure bracketing. You should give it a try. I will. And then the 5th one is art filters bracketing. To be honest, this one is totally useless for me. I don't really like the art filters at all. I wouldn't say never, but very, very seldom use them. But if you want to see how a scene looks with different art filters, just go ahead. You can choose which art filters it will bracket. And on this one also, it takes only one image and then it will store them or record them with different art filters applied. So it's something fun that you might want to try. If there is something that you like, then you might want to use them. But as I said, art filters are not my favorites anyways. And before we get into the last one, I will have a couple of extra tips in the end. Surprise! And then the 6th one is the thing that I think that most of us use the most is focus bracketing. And I have a dedicated video to focus bracketing and you can watch it from here. But I will talk briefly about it on this video too, so this will be a full tutorial on bracketing. What focus bracketing is, that is the camera takes automatically images which are focused to a different place or different spot in the scene. And most likely you have used it with macro photography. You can use it with landscapes, but I've never tried it. And to be honest, it's something that could be done, but not very efficient way, because you can stop down your image and get the same result. But of course, if you do not want to stop down too much because you're afraid of diffraction that comes into or actually introduces or comes visible is the right way to say it, if you stop down too much. And there is a video about diffraction if you want to watch what it is all about. But let's get back to the focus bracketing. The things that you can set up are the amount of images that it will bracket or it will take with different focus distances. You can choose from 3 all the way to 999 images. But to be honest, I've never really understood how much bracketing is needed if you need to take 999 images. And I don't think it's even possible, because there isn't enough depth the camera to focus for that many images. But if you have succeeded to make 999 images, please let me know in the comments down below. It would be really interesting to hear, because I have never really achieved that many images. And then you have the ability to stack those images in camera, in some Olympus cameras. And if you don't have that feature in your camera, you can still take the focus bracketing and make the final image in Photoshop. It's really easy. And there are some other image editing software that you can also do the stacking. And other things you can set up in the menu also is the difference between 2 shots. So how far is the next one going to be focused? And I haven't really figured out if you set this like 5, I don't really know how much that is. It depends on the focusing distance and it depends on the lens you're using. But the rule of thumb is that the smaller the object is, the shorter the difference should be, and the bigger the object is or the subject, the bigger the difference should be. And also, if you stop down, then you can have a bit larger difference between 2 shots. That, you know, the difference between they're focusing to. So, but I've really tried to figure out what the differences are, but haven't really figured that out. But the rule of thumb works pretty well. But as I said, there is a dedicated video about focus bracketing, and there's also a link in the description of this video to that video if you want to watch that. There's some more info and some actually footage that how it really works. With focus bracketing, experiment is the thing that will make you a master of it. And also in focus bracketing, you can set the charge time for your flash. If you have a studio flash and it takes a bit of time to get the full power after it has lit the subject, then you will need to set the diff. Let's say that it takes about a second for it to be fully charged, then set 2 seconds for the shot. So there will be a delay between shots if you need to. But if you are using Olympus flashes, then you don't need to set the difference. The camera can understand when the flash has full power. So if you have a Olympus flash, don't worry about the delay for flash. And yeah, then one thing about the stacking mode. The stacking in camera will be a JPEG. So if you want a RAW file or better quality image for post-processing, I suggest that you only do the focus bracketing in camera and then do the stacking in post. The first extra tip is that you can bracket multiple things at the same time. So for example, you can have white balance bracketing and ISO bracketing on at the same time, and it will bracket and makes a lot of different combinations. But be aware, there will be a lot of images. And if you bracket ISO values and you have EV step 1/3 of a stop, you will get these ISO values. Yeah, you can have L125 and L160. That's really interesting. I actually just figured it out when I was making the script for this video. I think it's quite fascinating to get ISO values that are not otherwise possible. And the way you know how many images you need to take is when you turn on the bracketing, you will have a white BKT logo in the top part of the LCD and the EU viewfinder. And when it's green, you will need to take those images. It's still bracketing. And then when it's turned back to white, then you all set. So that's how you know how many images you will take. What is the bracketing feature that you have used the most? Or do you use bracketing at all? Please let me know in the comments down below. And I hope this video has been helpful, and thanks for watching, and bye for now.